You're a grown man. I'm sorry to call you out like this. I cannot believe they promised features. There's nothing on here. I think he might have saw some dollar signs. It was remastered in standard depth, so don't act like you don't know anything. This guy is out of his mind. You gotta wonder, like, what the...
The world of horror physical media is ripe with some interesting tales. One of the tales we just talked about not too long ago was the Wizard Big Box fiasco with Charles Band in 2013. But there's some other stories that I'm really interested in telling. One of these is about a coveted little slasher film. The name of the movie is Rocktober Blood. Now, for a second, let's talk about this film. Why is it a fan favorite? Well, when you talk about horror movies from the 80s, movies like Trick or Treat with Sammy Kerr, movies like Black Roses come to mind. Now, these are 80s classics that revolve around rock and roll heavy metal, something that is basically synonymous with horror. There's a few other movies, and one of those movies happens to be a movie called Rocktober Blood. Now, Rocktober Blood is a little 80s horror gem about this band where the singer dies, is buried, and the singer Billy, who passes away, is either a ghost or he's come back to get revenge and kill the rest of his band. It's a quaint little movie that I actually enjoy quite a bit. The soundtrack is really good. There's songs on there that I love listening to this very day. As a matter of fact, one company put the soundtrack out on vinyl, and I sure enough picked it up. I love the soundtrack to Rocktober Blood. Now, like a lot of horror movies, sometimes these movies aren't exactly owned by companies. Sometimes they can be owned literally by people. It looks like one of those cases is this with Rocktober Blood. Now, a name that you're going to need to know for this video is the Sebastians. Now, who are the Sebastians? Here's what we know about them. They seem to keep a fairly low profile. The Sebastians are the people that produced, wrote, and directed this movie. Now, the wife is the woman who actually directed Rocktober Blood, while the husband wrote the film, and I believe he might have had a partner involved. The movie came out in 1984, and as far as any sort of theatrical release, I'm not sure if it had anything like that, but it did have a VHS release, and it did really well. Rocktober Blood was very, very successful on home video at a time where home video was in fact exploding. All these years later, there is a dedicated fan base to Rocktober Blood, and while it may not scale the heights of like a Trick or Treat or Black Roses, it's the tier right under it for sure. And there's even a few things I like about Rocktober Blood more than the other films. So the story jumps to latter day around the mid-2010s. Now, here's the thing about some of these movies. We wait for releases to come out for them, and sometimes they never do. Now, this video is only going to be possible because of Paul Zamorelli and his channel, The Analog Archivist. We are going to be using some clips from his video to help tell the story, and some of the images I show will be taken directly from the video that he posted. Paul, if you see this, thank you for helping the story be possible. Your video is the only reason I'm able to do this, and I want more people to know about this fiasco of a release. So in the mid-2010s, people were clamoring for releases of horror movies that they wanted to see on high definition, and Rocktober Blood was no difference. All of a sudden, this Facebook page came about called Rocktober Blood. People started noticing it, and this page started touting off that a Blu-ray for this movie was going to come out. It is also important to know that there was some sort of GoFundMe that was either created at the beginning, during, or after. History doesn't really show exactly when it was as far as I know, but it looked like there was going to be some sort of GoFundMe to fund what would be a sequel to Rocktober Blood. Somebody was going to be in charge of this Facebook account, and we figured out who it was. It was the actor Trey Lauren, aka Billy from Rocktober Blood the movie. Now, he seemed to be behind this Facebook account talking about the new release and things coming out, and at first, things seemed really, really promising. As a matter of fact, people started asking him about the supposed Blu-ray release for Rocktober Blood. One of the questions that was asked was, well, is this going to be a real Blu-ray? Is this going to be some kind of Blu-ray R? Let's check in with Paul Zamorelli to see what he found out online when this question was being asked.
The big question was whether this was going to be a 35mm print. Now, there were a few other companies that were interested in trying to gain the rights to this movie. I spoke with one of them. They had a conversation with Billy. The interesting thing about that conversation was that there was something important mentioned there. Billy, I think, who was having this conversation with this person, said that there did exist a print with Lionsgate. Why Lionsgate has it, I don't know. They're not the distributor of the movie anymore, I don't think. I mean, they should just give it the print. I don't know the politics around that, so let's not go there. Then someone asks on Facebook, well, is this going to be sourced from a 35mm print or whatever? He says yes. That's what he says. Okay, so now we're starting to think we're getting a real legit print here. But then there's some conflicting information. If you go on the website, the first source, which I think was on the first page on the October Blood 2 website, it says that it's remastered from original elements. What that to me means, it's going to be sourced from the original means first, elements. The negative of the film, the 35mm print negative. What else was promised? Somebody asked on the Facebook page, well, is this going to be a legitimate release, or is it going to be DVD-R, Blu-ray-R, CD-R, whatever? He says these are legitimate releases. Now, I guess some people could interpret legitimate as official, but of course, it's obvious what that person was asking. Is it a DVD-R or not, or a Blu-ray-R or not? By saying it's legitimate, it gives the impression that these are pressed discs. So that's another thing we were promised.
So you can see on that Facebook account, it was actually noted that this was supposed to be something that was a print that they got at Lionsgate in the storage vaults. Now, why was it at Lionsgate? I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, from what we understand, this movie was owned by the Sebastians, but the more we look into the story, it may not even be the case that they own the film anymore. Some of this is truly speculation. We don't know all the details, but let's continue. One of the other questions that was going to be asked about this supposed release was, is there going to be any special features? Are there going to be any commentaries? Well, of course, on this Facebook page that was interacting with the fans, somebody asked this. Let's check back in with Paul Zamorelli to see what he conjured up when he looked online for this.
Also, you gotta remember, like I said, Billy was really running this show. Billy is a big part of the movie. He's like the lead villain or lead character or whatever. So I'm assuming that because Billy is really running this whole production with the Blu-ray, that he's going to do an interview. He might even do a commentary track. In fact, if you go on the Facebook page, someone asks, is there going to be a commentary track? What does Billy do? Gives them a thumbs up. He doesn't reply, but he gives a thumbs up, which is positive. I mean, he's not saying he's doing one, but he's saying that it's possible, it's a good idea or whatever. And those are things to remember for this.
It seemed like the person running this account either knew what they were doing and were just trying to conjure up as much sales for this Blu-ray as possible, or they were truly ignorant. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. There are even some points where the guy that was running the account, Trey Lauren, aka Billy, would snap back at some of the people that were actually asking questions. I think Paul might have got a screen cap of this as well. Let's go have a look.
Some people have, since they've gotten a release, tried to ask Billy, like, oh, I've heard that this was not a 35mm print, Billy. What's the case? He's like, I don't know. I'm not the transfer guy. Well, that's really funny because a month or two back you were saying it's from a 35mm print, and you told one of my buddies that there was a negative at the at Lionsgate. So don't act like you don't know anything. Obviously, you knew something. So, and when you go on that page, he's having this whole argument with this guy on there, Nigel. I don't know. Like, he's so totally unprofessional about this whole thing, and they're just throwing like nasty words at each other. Like, wow, this is real. The Sebastians really let this guy put this together. Like, this guy is out of his mind. You gotta wonder, like, what the hell happened?
One of the things when I was watching Paul's video for the first time that was truly telling is when we saw some behind-the-scenes footage of the remastering process for Rocktober Blood. And it's important to note before this, Billy, aka Trey Lauren, went on the Facebook page for Rocktober Blood claiming that he'd seen the movie and it looked and sounded phenomenal. But when we go look at some of this behind-the-scenes remastering process footage, what it looks like is a VHS rip of the movie on the screen of some sort of Mac computer with a guy with his hand on the mouse seemingly doing nothing. Have a look at this.
There's no excuse for this. This movie was remastered, not in HD, but in standard def. Could you believe this? It was remastered in standard def, so even when they remaster it and put these new, text on there, like I said, the copyright, that's not even in HDs.
All this being said, despite a lot of the speculation, there seemed to be a lot of hype for this new release of Rocktober Blood. After all, this is a fan favorite cult hit. It's an awesome movie, if I do say so myself. But I think there was a lot of people that were wondering, is this going to be legit or not? Even with this account being run by Billy to try to get people excited, nothing was truly black and white. Before you knew it, these releases were getting ready to be sent out. Now, it's important to note the price of this. It was not cheap. The Blu-ray was around $50. Now, this Blu-ray was going to come autographed by Billy, and it was also supposed to come with a CD soundtrack. What we learned is that CD soundtrack was probably just a rip of the songs that they got off of YouTube and put on a disc with some burnt art that they put on top. But we'll get to that in just a minute. It's also important to note that the DVD was not much cheaper. So before you know it, these Blu-rays start getting sent out, and as soon as they arrived, everybody's worst nightmare was then realized. A viewer of the channel named Dave sent me some pictures of his release, and we'll talk about what he had to do after this was all said and done that you guys will find interesting. But here's some pictures of this release. As you can see, the Blu-ray has really shoddy looking artwork that was clearly done on a computer like Photoshop, where they threw a Blu-ray logo on the front cover. And in the back, if you look closely, there's even some typos and weird writing on here. This is clearly a disaster of a release. What was touted off to be something that was taken from a negative at first, found from the Lionsgate vault, was soon to be realized of one of the worst Blu-rays ever made. So, in Paul's video, he described taking the Blu-ray out of the case, looking at the back, and sure enough, was it a Blu-ray R? Let's go look and find out.
So I was busy doing something else, and I was thinking of this because I didn't really look at it much. And I think, could that be a Blu-ray R? I'm like, nah, it can't be a Blu-ray R. Paid $50 for this, not including the shipping. Well, how could this possibly be Blu-ray R? I look at the disc. Disc looks okay, right? Doesn't look so bad. And then I look at the back, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It's a burned disc. I paid $50. The DVD was $30. Alright, so what the hell is that? Like, I don't understand how that happened. With the price that these were selling at, you could have made pressed discs. You gave us crap.
By this point, you know that this is going to be a disaster. But what was even worse is when Paul put his own Blu-ray into the player. This Blu-ray that was touted to look fantastic by Billy was simply a VHS. Paul described that the VHS had modern text over the top of it, meaning this is something to try to make it seem like they did something, I guess. In actuality, all this was a VHS put onto a Blu-ray disc. I feel bad for the people that bought this on DVD, but I feel even worse for the people that bought this on actual Blu-ray. It looked no better, and they paid $20 extra for this. So this whole thing was a giant fiasco, and the speculation is that all of this was trying to conjure up attention to try to get a GoFundMe to fund a Rocktober Blood 2, which clearly nothing came from this. As a matter of fact, the outpouring of hatred and anger after this was rabid. One of my viewers, Dave, actually told me he called up Billy and talked to him on the phone. But before we get to that, there's some even worse stuff about this that'll probably make you guys laugh. As Paul begins to describe this release and he's watching it, he realizes, yeah, it's a VHS rip. They put modern texts over the top. But one of the things that was never clear, but Billy definitely gave a thumbs up to somebody in the chat, was that this release was going to have a commentary track and/or special features. Needless to say, this thing had no menu screen. So Paul described what happened when he fast-forwarded to the end of the movie to see if there was any special features. Let's see what Paul says when he gets to the end of this Blu-ray.
I thought there was no features on this at first. I was like, I cannot believe they promised features. There's nothing on here. I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, you know what, let me fast forward to the very end. Maybe they just, put it at the end. The end does have an interview with the husband and wife, the Sebastians, I guess, that made these movies. It's about, I think, 10 minutes long. You know what they're talking about? They talk all about the making of Rocktober Blood and all this stuff and all the actors. I'm just kidding. No, they didn't. They didn't talk about Rocktober Blood at all. What they talk about, two main things: Greyhound dogs and Jesus. That's the only things they talk about. It has nothing to do with this movie. The only little tidbit that they say about this movie is that the reason they didn't release this sooner is because they didn't think Jesus would be happy with them. Could you believe it? They thought that Jesus wouldn't be happy with them. I'm sure Jesus is all about making a living and stuff. But then, I think he might have saw some dollar signs, Mr. Sebastian, or wherever these people are, and said, maybe I could twist this. Maybe Jesus wants me to release the Blu-ray for $50, $60, as long as I put a Jesus message at the end of the movie, which is what the interview was.
I couldn't believe it. I was laughing watching this video. So the Sebastians seem to be some sort of born-again Christian family, and hey, that's fantastic. I applaud anybody that can find Christ in their life and legitimately find Christ. The question is, how did this release go about? I assume that the Sebastians truly do own this movie, and they have the say and the rights and the license to put this out with whoever or whatever they want to put it out with. There's some sort of speculation that this Trey guy is the son of the Sebastians, but nobody really knows for sure. I don't think he is based off of the last name, but at the same time, who really knows? I don't know. I tried to look up some info on this on the internet, but the info was very, very scarce. To make matters worse, one of the funniest things was this. Billy signed all the Blu-rays for this release that came out. Well, Paul's release did get signed. Let's go see what he says about that signature that Billy did. You guys are not going to believe this.
If you look closely to the top, you can see where they tried to airbrush out some of the text from the top of the VHS case. I thought that was funny. They didn't even do a good job at that. You look at the back here. Well, first, before we look at the back, Billy signed the cover. That's cool, right? Well, he signed the case. He signed the case. It's not on the sleeve. Now, come on, Billy. You're a grown man. I'm sorry to call you out like this, but use your noggin. Now, if I have this on my shelf, like between movies, and I'm pulling it out, pushing it back in, moving Blu-rays around, you could say goodbye to the signature. It's gonna rub off. You always sign the sleeve. The sleeve is the original part. These cases, you know, this could crack. What am I gonna do if this cracks? I can't replace the case because the signature's on there. Like, it doesn't make sense, Billy. Like, what were you thinking? You're supposed to sign the sleeve. I didn't notice it at first when I first pulled it out. I went online. Look, it's smudging already. This should have been dry, and I actually just smudged it.
This has to be one of the most botched releases of all time. All the buildup for this had fans so excited. There was this Facebook page touting that they found a negative of this at Lionsgate. There was going to be commentaries. It looked fantastic. It was all lies. Why? Why lie about this? But Paul's situation was unique. He's somebody that was really keen to what was going on here, so he bought this truly just to do a video and inspect it for viewers to see. But not everybody was like Paul. I mentioned earlier that one of my viewers, Dave, actually did buy this release. Well, Dave told me that when he got his release, and here's a picture of it right here again, he said he was so upset that Dave started corresponding with Billy or Trey through emails and eventually got his number so where he could call him to talk to him. Well, Dave complained about everything to him, saying, you lied about this, you lied about this, you lied about this. And Dave recalled that Billy, aka Trey, basically was like, yeah, I don't know anything about that. I'll just give you your money back. You're going to tell me you don't know anything about that? Come on, man. Well, it seemed like Dave got his money back for this release. The irony is, I wonder if this is some sort of a collector's item now. Who knows? But I can tell you this to cap off this story. Years later, I went on Amazon, and they were selling that Rocktober Blood DVD for $5. And it was the Billy release, as I'll dub it, because at the very end of that DVD was the Sebastians. From what I understand, some companies, I think TerraVision might be one, are trying actively to legitimately put out Rocktober Blood on high definition. I really hope it does, but when it comes to releases, this is one of the worst I've ever heard of. The Rocktober Blood release, released by Trey Lauren through a Facebook page he created, lied essentially about every single thing when it was coming out. So there you have it, guys. That is the troubled history of the Rocktober Blood release back in the mid-2000s. Thank you guys for watching this. If you enjoyed this story, please give me a thumbs up and share it around on social media. I'd really appreciate it. And this is your old pal CHH saying, I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.